The cantina on Station Omega-7 was dark and quiet. Commander Zektar sat alone at his usual table in the corner. His blue skin was covered with old battle scars. His forearms held a glowing drink that made soft bubbling sounds. The old warrior had fought in many wars across the galaxy, but nothing scared him like his memories of fighting humans. 3 young alien soldiers walked up to his table. They had just finished training and wanted to hear war stories. There was Crix, a tall green alien with big eyes. Next to him stood Vela, a small crystal creature that sparkled in the dim light. The third was Goruk, a huge rock-like being with massive arms. "Tell us about the humans," Crix said with excitement in his voice. "We heard you fought them during the Great War." Zektar looked up at the young soldiers. His old eyes were tired and sad. "Sit down," he said slowly. "But know this. What I tell you is not a happy story. This is not about heroes or glory. This is about why we learned to fear the humans." The 3 young aliens sat down quickly. They had heard whispers about human wars, but no one would talk about details. Zektar took a long drink and began his story. It started 5 years ago at Kepler Mining Station. It was a small human base on the edge of their space. Maybe 50 humans worked there, digging for rare metals. They had no weapons, no warships, no army. He paused and looked at each young face. Then the Red Claw pirates found them. 12 warships filled with the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. The pirates thought it would be easy. Kill the humans, take their metals, and leave. Goruk leaned forward. 50 humans against thousands of pirates? That must have been quick. Zektar shook his head. That is what everyone thought. The pirate leader, Captain Thok, sent a message to the human station. He said surrender or die. He gave them 1 hour to decide. The old commander's voice got quieter. The humans had a meeting. Their leader was a woman named Lisa Bell. She was young, maybe 30 years old. Their chief engineer was a man called Jake Turner. These were not soldiers, they were miners and scientists. Vela's crystal body flashed with curiosity. What did they do? They said no, Zektar replied. But that was not the strange part. The strange part was what happened next. Jake Turner went to the mining equipment. These machines were made to cut through rock and metal. He looked at them for a few minutes, then smiled. Zektar drank again before continuing. Jake took the mining lasers and connected them to the station's power core. He turned rock cutters into weapons. He took the ore processors and filled them with metal scraps to make bombs. In 1 hour, he turned a mining station into a fortress. The 3 young aliens looked at each other with confusion. Crix spoke first, but that should not work. Mining tools are not weapons. That is what we all thought, Zektar said, but humans do not think like us. When we see a mining laser, we see a tool for mining. When humans see a mining laser, they see anything they need it to be. The old warrior continued his story. Lisa Bell organized the other humans. She put them in groups. Some watched the sensors, others prepared the makeshift weapons. A few worked on the station's defenses. They moved like they had done this before, but none of them were soldiers. Goruk's rocky face showed doubt, but they were still just 50 humans against 12 warships. Zektar nodded. Yes, when the pirates attacked, their first wave should have destroyed the station in minutes. But the humans had surprises ready. They used the mining charges to create fake walls. When the pirates broke through, they found empty rooms filled with explosive traps. The commander's voice got darker. Jake Turner had done something else. He connected all the mining equipment to work together. When the pirates got close, the humans turned their entire station into one giant weapon. They used the mining lasers like a massive gun. They used the ore processors to shoot chunks of metal at the pirate ships. Vela's light flickered with amazement. Did it work? 3 pirate ships were destroyed in the first attack, Zektar said. But that made Captain Thok angry. He sent all his remaining ships at once. The humans could not fight them all. The 3 young aliens leaned closer. They thought the story would end with human defeat. Zektar surprised them. Lisa Bell had one more plan. She told Jake to overload the station's main reactor. She was going to blow up their own base. Crix gasped. That would kill them all. That is what Captain Thok thought too, Zektar explained. So when Lisa sent him a message saying she would destroy the station, he laughed. He thought she was bluffing. He thought no one would kill themselves to win a fight. The old commander finished his drink. Captain Thok was wrong. The humans waited until all the pirate ships were close to the station. Then Lisa gave the order. Jake overloaded the reactor, but he did it in a special way. Instead of a normal explosion, he made the reactor turn into a focused beam of energy. Goruk's eyes grew wide. What happened? The energy beam cut through, space like a sword, Zektar said. It destroyed 6 more pirate ships instantly. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from 3 star systems away. But the humans had built special shields around their control room. Most of them survived. Vela asked, "What about the remaining pirates?" Zektar smiled, but it was not a happy smile. The 3 surviving pirate ships tried to escape, but the explosion had damaged their engines. The humans used their mining ships to hunt down the pirates one by one. Ships that were built to carry rocks became warships. The 3 young aliens sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Crix spoke. The humans won? Yes, Zektar said. 50 human miners defeated the most feared pirate fleet in the galaxy. They did it with mining tools and stubbornness. That was when the Galactic Council first realized that humans were different. Goruk shook his massive head. But they almost died. Why would they take such a risk? Zektar looked at him with serious eyes. Because humans do not understand the word impossible. When we see a problem we cannot solve, we find a different problem. When humans see a problem they cannot solve, they change the rules until they can solve it. The old commander stood up slowly. That was just the first story. There are worse ones. Much worse ones. As he walked away, the 3 young aliens remained at the table thinking about what they had heard. They had come looking for exciting war stories. Instead, they had learned why the galaxy's strongest warriors whispered about humans in the dark. Partier, the Siege of Proxima. Base Zektar's second tale focuses on the most brutal engagement of the integration wars. The Coalition had surrounded Proxima Base, a human military installation on the edge of their territory. What should have been a simple siege turned into a months-long nightmare that broke several Coalition commanders. The alien veteran describes Colonel Ben Parker, the human base commander who turned every corridor into a killing field. Parker's forces numbered barely 300 humans against the Coalition's 50,000 troops, yet they held their ground through tactics that horrified their attackers. Zektar explains how humans used their own wounded as bait, rigged medical supplies with explosives, and created psychological warfare campaigns that drove Coalition soldiers to madness. Sergeant Amy Foster led raids using ventilation systems, appearing and disappearing like ghosts to strike at Coalition supply lines. The most disturbing moment came when the humans faced starvation. Instead of surrendering, they began rationing their dead, sustaining themselves on fallen comrades while continuing to fight. Dr. Kate Nelson, the base medic, methodically cataloged which organs could be harvested without compromising combat effectiveness. The siege only ended when the Coalition agreed to negotiate rather than continue losing entire battalions to human ingenuity. The recruits shift uncomfortably, as Zektar describes finding Coalition soldiers who had gone catatonic from fear, unable to process the human capacity for adaptive violence. The next day, the 3 young aliens came back to the cantina. They found Commander Zektar sitting at the same table, staring at his drink. His 4 hands shook slightly as he held the glowing cup. "Commander," Crix said carefully, "can you tell us another story about the humans?" Zektar looked up with tired eyes. "Are you sure? The next story is darker than the first one." Vela's crystal body flickered. "We want to understand. The Council says humans are our allies now, but you seem afraid of them." The old warrior sighed deeply. "Sit down then. I will tell you about the siege of Fort Steele. This happened during the war when we still thought humans could be beaten with normal tactics." Goruk settled his massive frame into a chair. "What is Fort Steele?" "It was a human military base on a small moon," Zektar began. Not important, really. Just 300 human soldiers guarding some supply routes. Our generals thought it would be easy to capture. The commander paused to drink. We sent 50,000 soldiers, our best troops. We had starships, energy weapons, and battle mechs. The humans had concrete walls and simple guns. It should have been over in one day. Crix leaned forward. But it was not. No, Zektar said quietly. It lasted 6 months. 6 months that changed how we think about war. The old alien began his story properly. The human commander was Colonel Ben Clark. He was not young like the miners from my first story. He was old, maybe 50 years. His hair was gray, and his face had many lines, but his eyes were like ice, Vela asked. What made the humans so hard to defeat? Zektar thought for a moment. They turned their base into a maze of death. Every hallway had hidden traps. Every room was designed to kill anyone who entered. Colonel Clark and his soldiers, like Sergeant Amy Lopez, made it so that we could not move anywhere safely. The commander continued. Amy Lopez was their scout leader. She was small, maybe half the size of Goruk here, but she moved through the air vents like a ghost. She would appear behind our lines, kill several soldiers, and vanish before we could react. Goruk shook his head. But you had so many more soldiers. Could you not surround them? We did surround them, Zektar replied. That was the problem. The humans did not fight like normal armies. When we cut off their supplies, they used our dead soldiers' equipment. When we poisoned their water, they filtered it through their own clothing. When we cut their power, they made electricity from scrap metal and body heat. The 3 young aliens looked confused. Crix spoke first. How is that possible? Zektar's voice grew darker. Because humans see resources where others see garbage. Their medic, Dr. Kate Green, took apart broken radios to make medical tools. Their engineer, Corporal Dave Hill, used destroyed vehicles to create new weapons. Nothing was ever truly broken to them. Vela's light dimmed. But surely they ran out of food. The old commander was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. That is the part that still gives me nightmares. When their food ran out, they did not surrender. They found other sources. The 3 young aliens waited, but Zektar seemed unable to continue. Finally, Goruk asked, What other sources? They ate their fallen comrades, Zektar said. Dr. Kate Green organized it like a science project. She decided which parts of dead humans could be used to keep living humans fighting. They did this for 2 months. The cantina fell silent. Even the background noise seemed to stop. Zektar continued. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that they kept fighting, better than ever. Hunger should have made them weak. Instead, it made them more dangerous. They fought like they had nothing left to lose. Crix's green skin had turned pale. How did the siege end? Our soldiers started breaking, Zektar explained. Not their bodies, their minds. They would wake up screaming about human ghosts in the walls. Some refused to enter the base, others would just sit and stare at nothing. The old warrior finished his drink. I was there when General Vox tried to motivate the troops. He told them they were the best soldiers in the galaxy. He said humans were primitive creatures who would break soon. Vela asked, What happened? That night, Amy Lopez and her team broke into our command center, Zektar said. They moved through ventilation systems we thought were too small for any living creature. They killed 12 officers and left a message written in their blood on the wall. Goruk's rocky face showed confusion. What did it say? It said, We are still here, Zektar replied. 3 words that made our entire army afraid to sleep. The commander stood up slowly. After that, more soldiers started breaking down. Some would not eat because they feared human poison. Others would not sleep because they feared human raids. Our army of 50,000 became an army of terrified children. Crix asked, So you retreated? Zektar shook his head. We tried one final assault. We sent everyone at once, thinking we could overwhelm them with pure numbers. Colonel Ben Clark was waiting for us. He had saved one last surprise. The three aliens waited breathlessly. The humans had turned their entire base into one giant trap, Zektar said. When we all charged in, they collapsed the tunnels. 3,000 of our soldiers were buried alive. The humans had used their own base as a weapon, just like the miners used their reactor. Vela's crystal body was barely glowing now. Did that end the war? No, Zektar said sadly. It ended when our own generals decided they could not afford to lose any more soldiers. We offered the humans a peace treaty. 300 humans had defeated 50,000 coalition troops. The old commander began walking away. Colonel Ben Clark came out to sign the treaty. He looked like he had not slept in months. But he was still standing, still ready to fight. That is when I realized that humans do not know how to give up. As Zektar disappeared into the shadows, the three young aliens sat in stunned silence, understanding for the first time why the galaxy had learned to fear humanity. A week passed before the three young aliens returned to the cantina. Commander Zektar was waiting for them, but he looked worse than before. His blue skin was pale, and his 4 hands trembled as he drank. "Commander," Vela said softly, "are you feeling well?" Zektar looked up with haunted eyes. "I have been dreaming about the stories I told you. Old memories are hard to forget." Crick sat down carefully. "Maybe we should not ask for more stories." "No," the old warrior said firmly. "You need to understand. If you are going to serve alongside humans, you must know what they are capable of." Goruk leaned forward. "What happened next in the war?" Zektar took a long drink before answering. "This story is different. It happened in deep space, far from any planet. My ship, the Eternal Justice, was patrolling the border between human and coalition space." The commander's voice grew quiet. "We found a human cargo ship drifting in the void. It was called the Star Trader. Our sensors showed it had no power, no life support, no engines. It looked completely dead." Vela's crystal body flickered with curiosity. "What was wrong with it?" "The ship had been hit by a meteor storm 3 weeks earlier," Zektar explained. "The damage was terrible. Holes in the hull, destroyed computers, broken engines. Any normal crew would have died in the first day." Crix asked, "But the humans were still alive?" Zektar nodded slowly. "Not just alive. They were thriving. When we boarded the ship, we found 12 humans living better than some people on space stations." The old alien continued his story. "Their captain was a man named Rick Stone. He was maybe 40 years old with brown hair and calm eyes. When he saw us, he smiled and welcomed us aboard like we were invited guests." Goruk's rocky face showed confusion. "How were they surviving without power?" "That is what amazed us," Zektar said. "Their engineer, a woman named Maria Santos, had rebuilt their entire life support system using spare parts and garbage. She used old food containers to filter air. She used broken pipes to move water. She used clothing and paper to insulate the walls." The commander paused to drink. But Maria had done something impossible. She had created a closed ecosystem inside the cargo bay. She grew plants using human waste as fertilizer. She raised small animals using food scraps. The ship was like a tiny planet. Vela asked, "How did they navigate without computers?" "Their navigator was a young man named Tom Bradley," Zektar replied. "He had mapped their route home using only his eyes and a piece of paper. He calculated distances by watching the stars. He knew exactly where they were and how to get home." Crick shook his head in amazement. "But that should be impossible. Space navigation requires complex computers." Zektar smiled grimly. "Tom showed me his calculations. Pages and pages of numbers, all done by hand. He had turned his brain into a computer. When I checked his work later, it was perfectly accurate." The old warrior's expression grew darker, but the most disturbing discovery was in the lower cargo holds. They had captured something that should have killed them all. The three young aliens leaned closer. "Void parasites," Zektar said. "Creatures that eat metal and live in the cold of space. They are impossible to capture safely. One parasite can destroy a battleship in hours." Goruk's eyes grew wide. The humans captured them. Not just captured, Zektar replied. They had studied them, learned from them, and turned them into weapons. Their chief mechanic, a man named Dan Cooper, had somehow made the parasites obey him. Vela's light dimmed with fear. How? Dan figured out what the parasites wanted, Zektar explained. He fed them the right metals in the right amounts. He kept them at the right temperature. He treated them like pets instead of monsters. The parasites began to trust him. The commander continued. Dan had built special containers for the parasites. He could release them when he wanted and call them back when he was done. He had turned deadly space creatures into guard dogs. Crix asked, "Did you help them repair their ship?" Zektar nodded. We were trying to help when the Red Fang pirates attacked. 5 pirate ships surrounded us, demanding we surrender both vessels. They wanted to capture the humans and sell them as slaves. The old alien's voice grew tense. I ordered my crew to prepare for battle. We were outnumbered, but we had stronger weapons. Then Captain Rick Stone asked me to wait 5 minutes. Goruk asked, "What did he do?" He sent Dan Cooper to release the parasites, Zektar said. Dozens of them, each one directed at a specific target on the pirate ships. The parasites moved through space like living bullets. The commander drank deeply before continuing. What happened next still gives me nightmares. The parasites ate through the pirate ship's hulls in minutes. But they did not just destroy randomly. Dan had trained them to target specific systems, engines, weapons, life support. Vela asked quietly, "What happened to the pirates?" The first pirate ship lost power and drifted helplessly, Zektar said. The second ship's weapons exploded from the inside. The third ship's engines overloaded and destroyed the vessel completely. The other 2 ships tried to escape, but the parasites followed them. Crix looked sick. The humans killed them all? Zektar shook his head. That is what made it worse. Dan called the parasites back before they could kill anyone. He left the surviving pirates alive but helpless. Then Rick Stone sent them a message. The 3 young aliens waited silently. The message said, "Tell others what you saw here." Zektar continued. Rick wanted other pirates to know that humans could control the most dangerous creatures in space. He turned the survivors into living advertisements for human power. Goruk asked, "What happened after that?" "We helped repair their ship," Zektar said. "But I watched them work. Every human knew exactly what to do. Maria fixed the engines using parts from our ship and theirs. Tom calculated a new route that would avoid other dangers. Dan put his parasites back in their containers like a farmer storing tools." The old commander stood up slowly. Before they left, Captain Rick Stone thanked me. He said humans were always happy to make new friends. But when he smiled, I saw something cold in his eyes. He was warning me as much as thanking me. Vela asked, "What was the warning?" Zektar looked at each young alien. The warning was simple. Humans can make friends with anything, even creatures that should kill them. They can survive anywhere, build anything, and turn any situation to their advantage. Cross them at your own risk. As the old warrior disappeared into the shadows, the 3 young aliens realized they were beginning to understand why the galaxy both feared and respected humanity. 2 weeks passed before the 3 young aliens came back to find Commander Zektar. This time he was not in the cantina. They found him on the observation deck, staring out at the stars through the large windows. "Commander," Crix said softly, "we have been thinking about your stories. We want to hear the last one." Zektar did not turn around. The last story is the most important one. It explains why the war ended. It explains why humans are our allies now instead of our enemies. Vela moved closer. "What happened?" The old warrior finally turned to face them. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides, and his eyes looked very tired. The final battle was at New Geneva Colony. It was the humans' most important military base. If we captured it, the war would be over. Goruk settled his massive frame on the floor. "How many humans defended it?" "Only 500, Zektar replied. But they were led by General Lisa Carter. She was the best human military leader, smart, experienced, and completely fearless. The commander sat down on a bench facing the 3 young aliens. "I was chosen to lead the assault team," 1,000 of our best soldiers with the newest weapons and armor. Our orders were simple: capture the human command center and end the war. Crix asked. It should have been easy with so many soldiers. Zektar shook his head slowly. That is what we thought. We had energy shields, plasma weapons, and battle suits that could stop any human weapon. The humans had simple guns that fired metal bullets and explosives that used old chemical reactions. The old alien continued. When we landed on the planet, everything seemed normal. The human base looked primitive compared to our technology. Concrete walls, metal doors, and simple electronic systems. Nothing that should have stopped a modern army. Vela's crystal body flickered with curiosity. But something went wrong. Everything went wrong, Zektar said quietly. The first problem was their command center. We expected to find advanced computers and holographic displays. Instead, we found General Lisa Carter working with paper maps spread across a wooden table. The commander's voice grew puzzled. She had a young soldier named Steve Adams helping her. He was using a simple radio to talk to human forces across the planet. No quantum communications, no satellite networks, just voice radio like children's toys. Goruk asked, how could they coordinate a defense with such simple tools? That is what amazed us, Zektar replied. Steve Adams was more accurate than our best computer systems. He could predict where our forces would attack and send human soldiers to stop us. He did all of this using paper maps and basic mathematics. The old warrior stood up and walked back to the window. But the real shock came when our psychic warfare division arrived. These were our most feared weapons, aliens who could attack enemy minds directly. Crix leaned forward. What happened when they attacked the humans? Zektar was quiet for a long moment. The psychic attacks did nothing. Worse than nothing. They made the humans angry. The three young aliens looked at each other in confusion. A human specialist named Nancy White was in the command center when the psychic attack began. Zektar continued. She should have collapsed, in screaming agony. Instead, she got mad. Very mad. Vela asked, what did she do? Something impossible, Zektar said. She somehow turned the psychic attack back on our soldiers. 3 of our best psychic warriors were left permanently damaged. They still sit in medical facilities, staring at walls and mumbling about human thoughts being too loud. The commander returned to his bench. That was when I realized we were not fighting a primitive species. We were fighting something completely different. Goruk's rocky face showed confusion. Different how? Every other species in the galaxy follows the same patterns, Zektar explained. When we are outnumbered, we retreat. When we are outgunned, we surrender. When we are facing certain death, we try to negotiate. The old alien's voice grew stronger. Humans do not follow these patterns. When they are outnumbered, they find ways to even the odds. When they are outgunned, they make better weapons from garbage. When they face certain death, they change the rules of the fight. Crix asked, is that why you stopped attacking? No, Zektar said. We stopped attacking because of what General Lisa Carter told me when I finally reached the command center. The 3 young aliens waited breathlessly. I broke through their defenses with 50 soldiers, Zektar continued. Lisa Carter was still sitting at her wooden table looking at paper maps. She was not afraid. She looked up at me and smiled. Vela asked, what did she say? Zektar's voice became very quiet. She said, you can kill me, but you cannot defeat us. There are billions more humans out there, and every one of them will fight like we have fought. This war will never end until you decide to end it. The commander drank from a small cup he had brought with him. Then she said something that changed everything. She said, but we do not want to fight forever. We would rather be friends. The choice is yours. Goruk asked. She offered peace. She offered alliance, Zektar corrected. She said humans could help us fight our real enemies instead of fighting each other. She said human creativity and alien technology together could make the galaxy safer for everyone. The old warrior looked at each young alien. I realized she was right. We had spent years trying to defeat 500 humans on one planet. There were billions of humans on hundreds of worlds. If we kept fighting, the war would last forever. Crix asked, "So you agreed to the alliance?" Zektar nodded. I sent a message to the Coalition Command. I told them we could not win this war. Not because we were weak, but because humans do not know how to lose. Every defeat makes them stronger. Every loss teaches them something new. The commander stood up again. The alliance was signed 1 month later. Now humans fight beside us instead of against us. They solve problems we cannot solve. They see opportunities we cannot see. They turn our failures into victories. Vela asked, "Are you still afraid of them?" Zektar thought for a long moment. Yes. But now I am glad they are afraid for our enemies instead of us. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they are also the most loyal allies. They will die for their friends just as readily as they will fight their enemies. The old warrior began walking toward the door. Remember this, young ones. Humans do not fight to win. They fight to survive. And they will always find a way to survive. As Commander Zektar disappeared down the corridor, the 3 young aliens remained on the observation deck, looking out at the stars and wondering what other impossible things humans might be doing out there in the darkness.